I stood in the stale air of my father's garage, watching two FBI agents in cheap suits haul a navy blue duffel bag out from under a loose floorboard. Dust motes danced in the harsh glare of the camera lights. My wife, Marina, was leaning against her armored Suburban, looking right into the CNN lens. She didn't glance my way once. "Walter Pierce is not a victim of circumstance," she said, her voice carrying that practiced, steely cadence that had made her a household name. "He is a predator who hid behind a carefully constructed reputation for integrity while bleeding this city dry." Today, we peeled back that mask. I felt my molars grind together so hard my jaw ached. My old man, the guy who used to tell developers to shove their gifts where the sun didn't shine, was being led toward a Crown Vic in cuffs. And the person leading the charge, the power hunter herself, was the woman I'd married. One of the agents, a beefy guy named Russo I'd seen at Marina's office parties, looked at me with something like pity. I wanted to punch it off his face. "Lachlan," Marina called out, finally turning her head. She gave me a look that was all business. "Get inside. Now." I didn't move. I watched the agent push Walter's head down to slide him into the back seat. My father's eyes met mine, wide, confused, and pissed off. The same look he'd given a crooked city councilman back in '09. "I didn't do this, son," he mouthed. "Did you hear me?" Marina stepped away from the SUV, smoothing her charcoal blazer. Her hair was perfect, not a strand out of place despite the chaos. "We need to discuss the terms of his initial appearance." I closed the distance between us, grabbing her arm just above the elbow. Not hard enough to bruise, but enough to make her stop walking. "What the hell are you doing, Marina?" "That's my father." She didn't flinch. She looked down at my hand, then back up at me, her blue eyes flat and cold. "He's a target, Lachlan. A big one. And you're either with this office or you're an obstruction. Choose. Choose." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You just put my 70-year-old father in a cage for a bag of cash that looks like it came straight from a prop department. Where's the chain of custody on that? Where's the evidence it's even his?" "The evidence is in the bag, along with bank straps linking it to the transit project," she said, shaking my hand off. She turned back to the camera crews, which were still eating this up. "We have a cooperating witness who verified Walter's role in steering contracts. This is a clean bust." "A cooperating witness?" I grabbed her shoulder this time, spinning her around. "Who? Sal Ricci? The guy facing 20 counts of fraud that you haven't indicted yet? You're using a junkie to nail my dad?" Her jaw tightened. I saw the muscle tick. "I'm not discussing ongoing investigations on a driveway. Go home, Lachlan. Or better yet, go to the office and start looking for a new job. Because if you keep this up, I'll have the FDIC looking into Pierce Construction's books by noon." I stared at her. The woman who'd slept next to me last night, who'd stolen the covers, was gone. In her place was a federal prosecutor who saw my family as a career-enhancing statistic. "You'd ruin me?" "I'm protecting the integrity of the Southern District of Pennsylvania," she said, her voice dropping to a low hiss. "Something your father forgot to do a long time ago. Now get out of my light. I have a press statement to finish." She turned her back on me. I watched her square her shoulders, flip her hair, and step back into the glare. "No one is above the law. Not even the patriarch of a prominent Philadelphia family," she told the cameras. "Walter Pierce's reign of corruption ends today." I walked back inside the house. The place smelled like lemon polish and betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Walter's number, then remembered he was sitting in a holding cell. I called his lawyer instead, Ellen Vance. "Ellen, it's Lachlan. They just took him." "I know," she said, sounding tired. "I was at the courthouse. Marina Sloan is pushing for a detention hearing tomorrow. She's going to argue he's a flight risk. He's 70 years old with a bum knee." I snapped. "Where the hell is he going to fly? The Poconos?" "Lachlan, calm down. I need you to think. Did your father ever mention anything about money? Any large deposits? Anything unusual?" "Hell no," I said. "You know Dad. He audits his own grocery receipts. He wouldn't take a dime he didn't earn." "This is a setup, Ellen. It has to be. The evidence looks pretty solid," she said cautiously. "The cash, the witness." "The cash looks too clean," I interrupted. "And the witness is a liar. Marina's leveraging a fraud case to get a win on a public corruption charge. It's a Hail Mary, and she's betting Dad won't fight back because he's too proud." I hung up feeling sick. I drove to the federal detention center. The process was a nightmare. It took 3 hours to get 10 minutes with him. When they finally brought him in, he looked smaller. His suit was rumpled, his hands cuffed to the metal table. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot but clear. They're saying I took 200 grand, Lachlan. $200,000. I've got more than that in my pension fund. I know you didn't take it, Dad, I said, leaning forward. I need you to listen to me. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to anyone. Not even Ellen without me present. Marina is trying to bury you. He let out a dry, bitter chuckle. She's good at it. Did you see her out there? She looked like she was enjoying it. He shook his head. I used to change her oil. I fixed her damn dishwasher when she first moved in. And now she's calling me a predator on national TV. She's trying to save Declan Frost, I said, keeping my voice low. This whole transit deal, it's his company that's the prime contractor. If Dad goes down, the heat's off Declan. Walter's eyes narrowed. That son of a bitch. I always knew he was dirty. He tried to buy me off last month. Offer me a consulting fee to streamline the scoring on the bid proposals. I told him to go to hell. You never told me that, I said, my gut twisting. Didn't think I needed to. I handled it. He sighed, rubbing his wrists. But now she's using that against me. She's making it look like I took the money anyway. We'll fight it, I promised. I'm going through the seizure docs tonight. I'm going to find a hole in her story. He looked at me, really looked at me. Be careful, son. Marina isn't just a prosecutor right now. She's a woman backed into a corner, and she's got the full weight of the Justice Department behind her. She'll come for you next if she thinks you're in the way. I left the jail feeling colder than when I'd gone in. I drove home to our townhouse in Society Hill. Marina was already there, pouring a glass of scotch in the dark living room. She didn't turn on the lights. How's the martyr? She asked, her voice echoing in the shadows. He's holding up, I said, tossing my keys on the console. Better than you'll be holding up when this falls apart. She laughed, a hollow sound. She finally turned on a lamp, and I saw her face was flushed, her eyes bright with adrenaline. It's not going to fall apart, Lachlan. The evidence is airtight. The witness is solid. Walter is going away for a long time. I walked over to the bar, pouring myself a drink. Sal Ricci is a convicted liar, Marina. And those bank straps on the cash, I've seen those before. They're not standard Fed issue. They look like the custom bands they use at Wilmington Trust for private banking clients. Like the ones Declan Frost uses for his corporate accounts. She froze. Her glass hovered halfway to her lips. For a split second, I saw a crack in the armor. Fear. Then it was gone, replaced by a cold fury. You're pathetic, she said, setting the glass down with a sharp click. You're so desperate to believe your father is a saint that you're inventing conspiracy theories. Those straps mean nothing. Cash is cash. Bullshit, I said, stepping closer. You're covering for Declan. He's the one who's dirty. He's the one who paid off the inspectors, and when it got too hot, he pointed you toward my dad, and you bought it. Or worse, you helped him stage it. She stood up, her movements sharp and precise. Watch your mouth. You're talking about a federal investigation. You're talking about my investigation. If you keep digging, I will personally ensure that every asset you own is frozen. I will make sure you never work in construction risk management again. Do you understand me? Are you threatening me? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm telling you how it is, she said, her face inches from mine. Your father is a thief. He stole from this city. And if you try to interfere with my case, I will treat you like any other co-conspirator. I'll burn you down, Lachlan. I'll burn this whole family to the ground to see justice done. Justice? I spat. You're not interested in justice. You're interested in saving your ex-boyfriend's ass because you still have feelings for him. This isn't about the law. It's about Declan. Her hand shot out, slapping me across the face. The sound cracked in the silent room. My cheek stung, but the look in her eyes hurt more. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. Don't you ever say his name in this house again, she whispered. Declan is a witness, a victim of your father's greed, and I am a United States attorney. You do well to remember which side of that badge you're on. She grabbed her overnight bag from the couch. I'm staying at the office. I suggest you start preparing your father for a guilty plea. If he cooperates, I might not recommend the maximum. If he fights me, she trailed off, letting the implication hang. If he fights me, I'll make sure he dies in prison, and I'll start looking into your company's risk assessments. I'm sure I can find something irregular. She walked out, the door slamming behind her. I stood there, my cheek throbbing, my mind racing. I finished my scotch in one gulp. She just confirmed everything. The threat, the cover-up, the motive. She was willing to destroy my father to save Declan Frost. I spent the rest of the night at my father's old home office in Chestnut Hill. The feds had torn it apart, leaving papers scattered everywhere. I sifted through the wreckage, looking for anything. A ledger, a note, anything that could prove his innocence. I found nothing. The place was a tomb of his former life. I sank into his leather chair, the one that still smelled like his Old Spice. I looked at the mess, the overturned books, the shredded files. And then I saw it, a small, almost invisible seam in the bottom of the top desk drawer. A false bottom. My heart started pounding. I pried it open with a letter opener. Inside, wrapped in a soft cloth, was his old digital voice recorder. The one he used to use for dictating memos before he retired. The one he claimed he'd lost years ago. I plugged my headphones in with fingers that felt clumsy. I pressed play. The audio was shaky, muffled, but the voices were unmistakable. Declan's first, smooth and arrogant. 5 million, Walt. Just take the fall. It's cleaner that way. We'll make sure it looks like you kept it all. Marina will handle the rest. My blood ran cold. I heard my father's voice, sharp and angry. You're out of your mind, Frost. I'm not going to jail for you. It's not jail, Declan said. It's a resort, and you're old. You won't last long anyway. Better to go out a fallen hero than a broke old man. Then a third voice, one that made my stomach drop. Marina, he's too stubborn. We do it my way. We put the cash in his garage. I'll handle the warrant and the witness. Sal Ricci is already on board. Once Walter is the primary, you walk as a cooperating witness. You keep the company, Declan. I'll make sure of it. Why are you doing this, Marina? Declan asked. Why sacrifice Lachlan's father? There was a pause. Then her voice, cold and final. Because I can't let you go down again. I won't. Lachlan will understand eventually. His father is just an old man with a few years left. You have a future, a legacy. I'm not going to let my father's mistakes define yours. The recording continued. I heard her instructing Declan on exactly where to hide the money in the garage, under the third floorboard from the left. It's warped. He'll never notice. And tell Ricci to stick to the script. Walter promised the contract for a handshake. Keep it simple. I stopped the tape. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the recorder. My wife, the woman I loved, she hadn't just been complicit. She'd orchestrated the entire thing. She'd framed my innocent father to save her corrupt ex-fiancé. I looked at the mess in the office, the wreckage of my family's name. I thought about the slap, the threats, the coldness in her eyes. I thought about my father's face in that jail cell. I slowly ejected the memory card from the recorder and slipped it into my pocket. I looked at the device, then smashed it against the edge of the desk until it was unrecognizable plastic and wires. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I wasn't going to play the grieving husband. I was going to do what I did best. Manage the risk, calculate the odds, and then I was going to burn her world to the ground. I walked out of the office, leaving the destruction behind. I had a recording, I had a plan, and I had a score to settle. Marina Sloan thought she was the hunter. She had no idea she'd just become the prey. The city lights of Philadelphia glittered outside, cold and hard. I got into my car, the memory card burning a hole in my pocket. Tomorrow, I'd call Ellen Vance. Tomorrow, the game would begin. But tonight, I just drove. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of clarity. The kind of clarity that comes right before the kill. I didn't sleep. I sat in my car outside my father's ransacked house until the sun came up, the memory card with Marina's confession burning a hole in my pocket. My cheek, where she'd slapped me, still stung, but it was nothing compared to the ice in my gut. She hadn't just arrested my father. She'd executed a hit on our entire family's name to save the guy she'd almost married. I drove to a diner in South Philly, the kind of place with sticky menus and cops eating eggs at 6 a.m. I ordered black coffee and pulled out my burner phone. I needed a brain that wasn't clouded by politics or ambition. I dialed Arthur Price. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly with age. Lachlan, you know it's not even 7 o'clock. Judge Price, I need 5 minutes of your time. It's about my father. Silence for a beat. Then a heavy sigh. I figured it was. Meet me at the club in an hour. And don't bring your wife. I hung up. The club was the Union League, where the old guard still pretended Philadelphia wasn't a cesspool of greed. I got there early, sitting in a leather chair in the library, nursing another coffee. Price walked in looking like a retired battleship. Solid, gray, and immovable. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Sit down, kid, and tell me why you look like you've seen a ghost. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. Because I have. Marina didn't just arrest Dad. She framed him. I have proof. Price's bushy eyebrows shot up. He didn't react with shock, just a slow, deliberate nod. Proof. In this town, proof is just a matter of perspective. What kind of proof? An audio recording, I said, sliding the memory card across the mahogany table. From my father's office. He recorded his last meeting with Declan Frost, and Marina was there. He picked up the tiny card, rolling it between his thick fingers. Let me guess. She's not discussing the weather. She's telling Declan how to frame my father, how to hide the cash, how to coach the witness. She says she's doing it so Declan doesn't go to prison. She calls my father an old man with nothing left to lose. Price's expression didn't change, but his eyes got colder. Marina Sloan, the golden girl of the SDPA. Christ, Lachlan, do you know what you're holding? You're holding a grenade with the pin pulled. If you go public with this, she'll be disbarred, prosecuted, and probably shanked in a holding cell. But she'll take you and your old man down with her first. She's got the full weight of the Justice Department behind her. I'm not looking for a fair fight, Judge. I'm looking for a win, I said, my jaw tight. I want her in a courtroom, under oath, where she can't lie her way out of it. I want a Franks hearing. He whistled low. A Franks versus Delaware hearing? To challenge the veracity of the search warrant affidavit? You're going to claim she lied to the judge to get into Walter's garage? Exactly. She swore the cash was found based on a reliable informant and independent investigative techniques. But the recording proves she knew exactly where the money was because she put it there. The warrant is fruit of the poisonous tree. Price leaned back, studying me. Kid, you're playing chess with a grandmaster. Marina will smell this coming a mile away. If you file that motion without ironclad authentication of that tape, she'll have you up on witness tampering or evidence fabrication charges before the gavel drops. She'll say you doctored it, and knowing her, she'll probably find a forensic expert who'll swear to it. I'll have it authenticated by an independent lab. 3 of them, I said. I'll bury her in chain of custody paperwork. I need to know the procedure. I need to know how to get this into evidence without her destroying it first. You don't, Price said bluntly. Not directly. If you give it to the defense counsel now, Marina's office will subpoena it during discovery for a potential obstruction case against you. You have to bait her. Make her think she's won. Make her get so cocky that she walks into a trap. I nodded slowly. I need to make her think I'm broken. That I'm convincing Dad to take a plea. Exactly. Play the part of the beaten husband. Let her think she's broken your spirit. And then, when she's least expecting it, when she's on the stand, you drop the hammer. He slid the memory card back to me. But be warned, Lachlan. Once you start this, there's no going back. She's not just a prosecutor. She's a cornered animal. And she's vicious. I took the card, slipping it into the inner lining of my wallet. I'm counting on it. I left the club and drove straight to the Federal Detention Center. I had to see my father again. Ellen Vance was already there, looking stressed. Lachlan, thank God. Marina just filed a motion to revoke his bail hearing. She's claiming he's a sophisticated flight risk and that he might intimidate witnesses. She's trying to isolate him, I said, my voice hard. Keep him locked up so he can't talk to anyone. Let the media circus bury him. I went into the visitation room. Walter looked worse. His eyes were sunken, his spirit dimmed by the fluorescent lights. I sat down, leaning close. Dad, listen to me. Don't say a word to anyone, not even Ellen without me here. Marina is trying to force a guilty plea. She's going to offer you a deal. Probation, maybe, if you confess. I'm not confessing to something I didn't do, he growled, his voice raspy. I'd rather die in here. You might get your chance if you don't play along, I said quietly. I need you to do something for me. I need you to act like you're considering the deal. I need you to tell Ellen you want to cooperate. His eyes narrowed. You want me to lie? After 60 years of preaching honesty? I want you to survive, I said, my voice low and intense. I have proof, Dad. Proof that Marina and Declan set you up. But I need time to set the trap. If you fight her now, she'll destroy us all. If you look like you're breaking, she'll get complacent. She'll make a mistake. He stared at me for a long moment, searching my face. You're playing a dangerous game, son. That woman, she's not the girl you married anymore. There's nothing left in her but ambition. I know, I said, and that's exactly why she's going to lose. He sighed, a rattling sound in his chest. All right, I'll play the part. But if this blows up in our faces, Lachlan, I'm holding you responsible for the grandkids never visiting me in the pen. Deal, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. Next, I called Ellen Vance. Ellen, tell Marina's office that Walter is having second thoughts. Mention that he's worried about the evidence and wants to discuss a resolution. Lachlan, are you serious? He's maintaining his innocence. Just do it, I said. Make it sound real. Tell them he's scared of the cooperating witness testimony. Marina will jump on it. She wants a conviction, not a trial. She'll see it as a chance to close the case quickly and move on to bigger fish. Sure enough, within hours, Marina's office reached out. It was her second chair, a young, eager bastard named Evans. He called Ellen, and I listened in on the extension. Ms. Vance, we've reviewed Mr. Pierce's change of heart, Evans said, his tone smug. The government is willing to offer a plea to a single count of misprision of felony, provided he forfeits the $200,000 and provides a full proffer of his dealings with the contractors. No jail time, just probation. My client is concerned about the witness, Mr. Ricci, Ellen said, sticking to the script. He maintains his innocence, but acknowledges the government's evidence is substantial. It's overwhelming. Evans corrected. We have the cash, we have the witness, and we have the paper trail. If he doesn't take this, Ms. Sloan is going to push for a 20-year sentence and a RICO indictment. She's in a mood to make an example of him. I'll convey the offer, Ellen said. After the call, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Marina was taking the bait. She thought my father was cracking. She thought I was helpless. I decided to pour some salt in the wound. I sent a text to Marina from my regular phone. Saw Evan's offer. Told Dad to take it. Can't let him die in prison over your ego. Meeting you at the office to discuss the logistics. I knew she'd be at the SDPA headquarters. I drove over, parking in the garage where she usually parked. I found her in the hallway, looking sharp in a dark suit, talking to a group of junior prosecutors. She saw me and dismissed them with a wave. "Lachlan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone icy. I put on my best defeated face, shoulders slumped, eyes red-rimmed. "I'm here to talk about Dad's plea. I convinced him to take it. I can't watch him rot in there, Marina. I just can't." She studied me for a long moment, her gaze piercing. I forced myself to look away, like I couldn't meet her eyes. "It's for the best," she said, her voice losing some of its edge. "He's an old man. He'll be on probation. He can live out his days quietly. It's more than he deserves, frankly." "You're a real humanitarian, Marina," I muttered, the bitterness leaking through my act. "Don't start, Lachlan. I'm offering him a lifeline. Take it, sign the papers, and then you and I can figure out what's left of our lives." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But I need to know something. Is there anything else? Any other evidence my father-in-law might have stashed away? Any recordings? Any diaries?" I looked up at her, letting a flicker of fear show. "Like what?" "He's a dinosaur. He barely knows how to use a smartphone. The only thing he ever recorded was his golf swing." She relaxed slightly. "Good, because if I find out you're hiding something, anything, I will bury you both. I'll make sure that plea deal is ripped up, and he spends the rest of his life in Allenwood." "There's nothing," I said, my voice steady. "Just a broken old man and a son who's tired of fighting a rigged game." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. Have Ellen send over the signed plea agreement by Friday. And Lachlan, stay away from the media. I don't want any more of your he's innocent speeches. It makes you look weak." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I watched her go, my hands balling into fists in my pockets. Weak. She thought I was weak. She thought she'd won. I left the building and drove to a secure storage unit I'd rented under a fake name. Inside, I pulled out the memory card and a high-end audio analyzer. I spent the next 6 hours running it through every forensic test I could find. I needed to be sure it was authentic. I needed to be sure it could withstand a Dauber challenge in court. By midnight, I had my answer. The metadata was clean. The audio waveforms matched known samples of both Declan's and Marina's voices. The background noise, the hum of the HVAC in my father's office, matched the building's specs. It was bulletproof. I made 3 encrypted copies. One I sent to a secure server in Switzerland. One I gave to a courier to deliver to Judge Price with instructions not to open it unless something happened to me. And the original I kept on the memory card, hidden in a false compartment of my watch. I called Ellen Vance. "It's time," I said. "File the motion for the Franks hearing. Cite newly discovered evidence that the search warrant was based on material omissions and falsities. Don't specify what the evidence is. Just say it calls into question the credibility of the affiant. Marina Sloan. Lachlan, that's a nuclear option. She'll be furious. I'm counting on it," I said. "I want her angry. I want her scared. I want her to come after me so hard that she trips over her own lies." I hung up and looked at my reflection in the dark window of the storage unit. I didn't look like a risk manager anymore. I looked like a man on a mission. Marina had slapped me, threatened my family, and destroyed my father's name. She thought she was the hunter. She thought she was untouchable. But she'd forgotten one thing. In my line of work, you don't just manage risk. Sometimes you become the risk. And I was about to become the biggest risk she'd ever faced. I drove home, the city lights blurring past. I knew what was coming. The subpoenas, the threats, the character assassinations. Marina would unleash the full force of her office on me. But I was ready. I had the recording. I had the plan. And I had nothing left to lose. I pulled in my driveway. The house was dark, empty, just like my marriage. I walked inside. the silence deafening. I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark, waiting for the storm to break. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're folding. Smart move. Marina's a force of nature. Don't get in her way. Declan. He was already celebrating. He thought he'd won. I smiled. A cold, hard expression. Not yet. You son of a bitch, I thought. Not even close. I typed back a single word. Enjoy the view from the top. It's a long way down. I hit send. Let him wonder. Let him sweat. The game was officially on, and this time I was holding all the cards. The subpoena landed on a Tuesday. Not on me. On Ellen Vance. Marina wasn't just being aggressive. She was being surgical. The cover letter, signed by her but drafted in that smug legalese of hers, demanded all communications, notes, and potential exculpatory evidence related to Walter Pierce's case. It was a fishing expedition, plain and simple. She was looking for the leak, for the crack in our defense. She wanted to know if we had the recording. I met Ellen at her office in Center City. The place smelled like old paper and expensive perfume. She tossed the subpoena on her desk like it was radioactive. She's coming for us, Lachlan, Ellen said, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. She's not just prosecuting your father anymore. She's investigating obstruction. If she thinks we're sitting on evidence, especially that tape, she'll have us both in front of a grand jury by Friday. I picked up the subpoena, scanning the dense paragraphs. She's bluffing. She's trying to rattle you. If she really knew about the tape, she wouldn't be asking for it. She'd already have a warrant for my arrest. Ellen sank in her chair, rubbing her temples. Don't underestimate her. She's already leaked to the Inquirer that Walter is obstructing justice by withholding financial records. She's painting him as a hardened criminal. The court of public opinion is already convicting him. I tossed the paper back on the desk. Let her talk. We need to keep her focused on the plea deal. Call Evans. Tell him Walter is ready to sign, but he's confused about the forfeiture clause. Say he thinks the $200,000 they found in his garage should be returned to him because it's his life savings. Ellen stared at me. Are you insane? That's the planted money. If he asks for it back, she'll have him up on perjury charges before he finishes the sentence. Exactly, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. She'll think he's so desperate, so stupid, that he's admitting the cash is his. It'll make her overconfident. She'll think the case is a slam dunk. She'll stop looking for the recording because she'll assume we're just a bunch of amateurs trying to salvage a guilty plea. Ellen hesitated, then slowly nodded. It's risky. If she calls the bluff, we're screwed. She won't, I say, my voice hard. She's arrogant. She thinks she's already won. I saw it in her eyes yesterday. She thinks I'm a broken man who's finally seeing reason. Let's give her exactly what she expects. Ellen picked up the phone, her hand surprisingly steady. She dialed Evans' direct line. I leaned in, listening on the extension. Mr. Evans, it's Ellen Vance. Regarding the government's generous offer, Mr. Pierce has a few final concerns. She paused, listening to his rapid-fire response. Yes, he's inclined to accept. However, he's confused about the asset forfeiture. He believes the $200,000 in question is, in fact, his personal savings, and he'd like it released upon sentencing to cover his legal fees and living expenses. The line erupted. Even through the receiver, I could hear Evans' high-pitched laughter. You're kidding, right? He's claiming the bribe money is his savings? That's rich. Marina is going to love this. Please convey his position accurately, Ellen said, her tone icy. He's an old man, Mr. Evans. He's not thinking clearly. He just wants this nightmare to end. Oh, it'll end. All right, Evans sneered. In a federal prison cell. Tell him if he signs the plea admitting to the cash being his, we'll drop the obstruction charge. But he doesn't get a dime of it. It's going into the crime victims fund. And if he tries to play games, Marina will personally ensure he dies in custody. Ellen hung up, her face tight. He bought it. He thinks Walter is senile. He said Marina will gut him like a fish if he doesn't sign by Thursday. Perfect, I said, standing up. Now we wait for her to get cocky. I didn't have to wait long. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Marina. Heard about the savings comment. Pathetic. Even for him. Sign the papers, Lachlan. End this charade. Or I start looking into your company's risk assessment practices. I'm sure I can find a few irregularities that warrant a fraud investigation. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I typed back. He's scared. He's not thinking straight. Give him a few more days. He'll sign and leave my company out of this. You've done enough damage to my family. Her reply was instant. Your family is a criminal enterprise, and I'm the one cleaning it up. Thursday, Lachlan, 5 p.m., my office. Bring the signed plea, or I start seizing assets. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, a grim satisfaction settling in my gut. She was taking the bait. She was so focused on the plea, on the finality of burying my father, that she was ignoring the bigger picture. She was walking right into the trap. I spent the next 2 days laying the groundwork. I contacted a high-profile forensic audio expert, a guy named Mick O'Malley who used to work for the Secret Service before he started consulting for the defense bar. I didn't tell him what was on the tape. I just gave him the original file and told him to prepare a certification of authenticity that could withstand a dauber challenge. He charged me 10 grand up front and promised it'd be ready by Friday. I also met with Judge Price again. This time, we met at a private club in Chestnut Hill. He was sitting in a leather booth, nursing a bourbon. "You've stirred the hornet's nest, kid," he said without preamble. "Marina's office is leaking like a sieve. They're saying Walter is trying to extort his own money back. She's got the media eating out her hand." "That's the point," I said, sliding a copy of the forensic report across the table. "I need you to review this, and I need you to be ready. If I file the motion for the Franks hearing, she's going to come at me with everything she's got. I need to know there's a judge on the bench who isn't afraid of her." Price scanned the report, his eyebrows rising. "Mick O'Malley, you're not messing around. This report is bulletproof. But Lachlan, a Franks hearing is a high bar. You have to prove she knowingly, intentionally lied to the magistrate. It's not enough that she was wrong. She has to have acted with deliberate falsehood or reckless disregard for the truth." "I can prove it," I said, my voice low. "The recording doesn't just show she knew the money was planted. It shows she orchestrated the entire thing. She coached the witness. She directed the search. She's not just a prosecutor. She's a conspirator." Price looked at me for a long moment, his old eyes sharp. "Once you file that motion, there's no going back. She'll be disbarred. She'll go to prison, and you'll be the most hated man in the SDPA. They'll never let you work in this town again." "I don't care about working in this town," I said. "I care about my father's name, and I care about justice, even if it means burning hers to the ground." He sighed, taking a slow sip of his drink. "All right, I'll speak to the chief judge. We'll make sure the motion gets assigned to someone who isn't in her pocket. But you better be ready for the fight of your life, kid. She's going to try to destroy that tape before it ever sees the light of day." "I'm counting on it," I said. Thursday arrived, 5 p.m. I walked into Marina's office at the SDPA headquarters. The place was buzzing with activity, but the atmosphere shifted when I entered. Conversations died. People looked away. I was a pariah in my own wife's domain. Marina was waiting for me in her office. The door opened. She was sitting behind her massive desk, looking like a queen on her throne. She didn't offer me a seat. "Close the door, Lachlan," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. I did, leaning against it. She slid a stack of papers across the desk. "The plea agreement. Sign it," she said, tapping the signature line. "Page 3. Initial here, here, and here. And the notary is waiting outside." I picked up the pen, then set it down. "I'm not signing." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? I'm not signing," I repeated, my voice steady. "The deal is off. My father is pleading not guilty, and we're filing a motion tomorrow morning to dismiss the indictment based on prosecutorial misconduct." For a split second, the mask slipped. I saw a flash of genuine shock, quickly replaced by a cold, deadly anger. She stood up slowly, her hands flat on the desk. "You're making a very big mistake," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You think you can come into my office and threaten me? You have no evidence, Lachlan. Nothing. Your father is a thief, and you're an obstructionist. I have a recording," I said, the words hanging in the air between us. "A recording of you and Declan Frost in my father's office. A recording of you telling him how to frame my dad. A recording of you coaching a witness to lie. A recording of you saying you're doing it because you can't let Declan go down again." The color drained from her face. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the mahogany. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. For the first time since this nightmare began, she looked genuinely scared. "You're lying," she whispered, but there was no conviction in it. "I'm not," I said, pushing off the door and stepping closer to the desk. "I have the original. I have 3 certified copies. I have a forensic report authenticating it. And I have a retired federal judge ready to testify about the chain of custody. The Franks hearing is happening, Marina, and you're going to be the star witness, or the defendant. Depends on how fast you can get a lawyer." She recovered quickly, her shock turning into an icy rage. "You think that tape will ever see the inside of a courtroom? I'll have it suppressed before you can even spell Daubert." I'll have you arrested for evidence tampering. I'll have Ellen Vance disbarred for withholding exculpatory evidence. I will end you, Lachlan. I will burn everything you've ever touched to the ground. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. You can try. But the recording is already in the hands of people who don't answer to you. People who remember what you used to be before you became Declan Frost's lapdog. The same people who know you've been burying cases for him for years to keep him out of prison. Her eyes widened. You don't know anything about that. I know enough, I said. I've had a lot of time to dig, Marina. While you were busy playing the power hunter on TV, I was looking at the cases you didn't prosecute, the contractors you didn't investigate, the competitors of Declan's who suddenly found themselves under federal scrutiny. It's not just my father, is it? It's a pattern of corruption. And that tape is just the key that unlocks the whole door. She slammed her hands on the desk, making the pens jump. Get out. Get out of my office before I call security and have you escorted out in cuffs. I picked up the unsigned plea agreement and tore it in half, letting the pieces flutter onto her desk. The only one leaving in cuffs is going to be you, Marina. Or maybe Declan. He's already looking nervous. I saw him at the Union League last night, drinking alone. He knows the walls are closing in. And when he realizes you can't protect him anymore, he's going to flip. He's going to trade your freedom for his. Just like you traded my father's for his. I turned and walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. See you in court, counselor. Try not to look too surprised when the bailiff plays the tape. It might ruin your righteous prosecutor image. I opened the door and walked out, ignoring the stares of her staff. I didn't look back. I could feel her eyes boring into my back, but I didn't care. The trap was sprung. She knew we had the recording. She knew the game was up. And now, she'd be desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. And I was counting on her to make the biggest one of her career. I drove home, my hand steady on the wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You showed your hand. Big mistake. Declan. He was panicking too. Good. Let them both panic. Let them scramble to cover their tracks. It would only make the evidence against them stronger. I texted back. Game over, Frost. Enjoy the fallout. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The city lights blurred past. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was still there, a cold knot in my gut, but it was focused now. Directed. I wasn't just fighting for my father anymore. I was fighting for the truth. And in a town built on lies, the truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark, empty, just like my marriage. But for the first time in weeks, it felt like a victory. I'd walked into the lion's den and walked back out, and the lioness was bleeding. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and sat in the dark. Tomorrow, Ellen would file the motion. Tomorrow, the world would start to see the real Marina Sloan, and I would be there to watch her fall. The courtroom was a zoo. Cameras flashed behind the bar. Reporters packed the pews, and the air buzzed with a tension so thick you could choke on it. I sat next to Ellen Vance at the defense table, my suit feeling like body armor. Across the aisle, Marina was already at the prosecutor's table, looking sharper than ever in a navy blue dress that screamed righteous authority. She didn't look at me. She hadn't looked at me since I walked in. Her jaw was set, her eyes fixed on the judge's bench like a predator sizing up its prey. Judge Hanrahan, a no-nonsense Irishman from Kensington, banged the gavel. Be seated. We are here on a defense motion for a Franks versus Delaware hearing to challenge the veracity of the search warrant in United States versus Pierce. Ms. Sloan, you're on the stand first. Swear her in. Marina rose, smoothing her skirt, and took the stand. She placed her hand on the Bible with practiced ease, her voice clear and strong as she swore to tell the truth. She looked invincible. She looked like she owned the room. Ellen started the cross-examination. Ms. Sloan, you personally oversaw the execution of the search warrant at Walter Pierce's residence, correct? I did, Marina said, her tone clipped and professional. Based on probable cause developed through a confidential informant and independent forensic analysis of financial records. The confidential informant being Salvatore Ricci, a contractor currently facing fraud charges in this district. Yes? Mr. Ricci was a cooperating witness providing credible information. Marina corrected, her tone implying Ellen was an idiot for not knowing this. Credible information, Ellen repeated, pacing slowly. Information that led you to a specific location in Mr. Pierce's garage, under the third loose floorboard from the left. Marina didn't miss a beat. The informant provided specific details regarding the concealment of the illicit funds. The investigation corroborated those details. Convenient, Ellen murmured. and the $200,000 in cash found there. It was bundled with bank straps, correct? Custom-printed straps from Wilmington Trust's private banking division. A flicker of annoyance crossed Marina's face. The origin of the straps is irrelevant. Cash is fungible. The presence of the cash itself in a hidden compartment in a house owned by a public official overseeing the contract is what matters. Irrelevant? Ellen pressed. Isn't it true, Ms. Sloan, that those specific straps are identical to the ones used exclusively by Frost Keating, the prime contractor on the transit project, for their internal executive distributions? Marina's eyes narrowed. Objection calls for speculation. The government has no evidence linking those straps to Frost Keating. I'll allow it. Judge Hanrahan grunted. Answer the question, Ms. Sloan. Marina's jaw tightened. The straps were not a focal point of the investigation. The focus was the cash. Let's talk about the focus, Ellen said, her voice dropping to a low, cutting tone. You've stated publicly and under oath today that Walter Pierce was the linchpin of this bribery scheme, that he was the one soliciting and accepting funds to steer the contract to Frost Keating. The evidence supports that conclusion, Marina said, her voice gaining an edge of frost. The evidence being the cash in the garage and the testimony of a witness you're currently refusing to indict on 20 counts of fraud in exchange for his cooperation. Ellen shot back. Isn't it true that you pressured Mr. Ricci to fabricate a story about Walter Pierce, promising him the contract in exchange for a handshake? Objection. Badgering. Marina's second chair, Evans, shot up, his face red. Overruled. Answer the question, the judge said, his eyes boring into Marina. Marina leaned closer to the microphone, her voice dripping with contempt. Mr. Ricci's testimony was thoroughly vetted and found to be credible. The defense is engaging in a desperate attempt to smear a reputable witness because they have no valid defense for their client's guilt. Reputable witness, Ellen repeated with a bitter laugh. You mean the man whose daughter's pending drug charges miraculously disappeared from the docket 2 days after he agreed to testify against my client? Is that the vetting you're referring to, Ms. Sloan? The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled to type, and the gallery buzzed. Marina's face finally lost some of its color. She shot a venomous look at Ellen, then at me. I kept my face a blank mask, giving her nothing. Objection. Move to strike. Evans yelled, but the damage was done. Judge Hanrahan banged his gavel. Order. Ms. Sloan, do not make me warn you again about your tone. And Mr. Evans, sit down. The question stands. Marina took a visible breath, composing herself. Any discussions with Mr. Ricci regarding other legal matters were entirely separate from his cooperation in this case. The timing is coincidental. Coincidental, Ellen said, drawing out the word. Just like it was coincidental that you were personally involved in the interview of Mr. Ricci, and that the interview memo was heavily edited, specifically removing his initial statement that he never met Walter Pierce, replacing it with Pierce promised the contract. Isn't that true, Ms. Sloan? Didn't you personally rewrite the witness statement to match the narrative you wanted to build? Marina's knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the witness box. She looked at Evans, a flash of panic in her eyes. He was frantically shuffling papers, looking like a deer in headlights. I may have clarified certain ambiguities in the draft transcript for accuracy. She stammered, the first crack in her armor. Clarified ambiguities. Ellen repeated, or fabricated evidence. Let's move on from Mr. Ricci. Let's talk about your relationship with Declan Frost, the executive vice president of Frost Keating. The same Declan Frost who was your fiancé until 18 months ago. Marina's spine stiffened. My personal relationships have no bearing on this case. Mr. Frost is a cooperating witness who provided crucial information leading to the recovery of the bribe money. A cooperating witness you're shielding from prosecution by pinning the entire scheme on a 70-year-old man with no prior record, Ellen said, her voice sharp as a blade. Isn't it true, Ms. Sloan, that you have a history of intervening in investigations that involve Mr. Frost? That you've used your position to lose evidence or slow-walk inquiries that might implicate him or his company? Objection. Compound question. Calls for speculation. Evans was on his feet again, his voice squeaking. Sustained. Rephrase. Counselor, the judge said, but his eyes were locked on Marina. He caught the shift in her demeanor too. I'll rephrase. Ellen said, turning back to Marina. Did you, or did you not, Have a conversation with Declan Frost and Walter Pierce in Mr. Pierce's office approximately 3 weeks prior to the execution of the search warrant. Marina hesitated. It was a long, pregnant pause that spoke volumes. She licked her lips, her eyes darting around the room before finally settling on the judge. I may have been present for a professional discussion regarding the transit project. A professional discussion, Ellen repeated, during which, isn't it true that Mr. Frost offered my client $5 million to take responsibility for the bribery scheme, and that my client refused? And isn't it further true that you were present for that refusal and subsequently devised a plan to plant the money in his garage and coerce a witness to lie about his involvement? The silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Marina's face was now sheet white. She looked like she might be sick. Evans had stopped shuffling papers and was staring at her in horror. Objection! This is outrageous! Evans shouted, but his voice lacked conviction. Judge Hanrahan leaned forward, his expression grim. Ms. Sloan, I expect an answer. Is there any truth to these allegations? Marina opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at me, and for a split second, I saw the woman I'd married. Scared, vulnerable, and utterly trapped. Then the mask slammed back down, replaced by cold, defiant fury. This is a farce, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. A desperate, last-ditch effort by a guilty man and his complicit son to avoid justice. I have never fabricated evidence or coerced a witness. My investigation was thorough, ethical, and led to the lawful seizure of evidence proving Walter Pierce's guilt. This line of questioning is a blatant attempt to smear my reputation and distract from the overwhelming evidence of corruption in this case. Your reputation, Ellen said, her voice dangerously quiet. We're not questioning your reputation, Ms. Sloan. We're questioning your actions, and we have proof of those actions. Your Honor, the defense moves to introduce Exhibit D, a digital audio recording recovered from the defendant's personal effects, specifically a voice-activated recorder concealed in his desk drawer. Marina's head snapped toward me. Her eyes were wide with disbelief, then pure, unadulterated terror. She finally understood. The ledger I'd hinted at, the financial records she'd been chasing. It was never about paper. It was about the recorder. The one she'd assumed was lost or never existed. The one Walter had kept as insurance, and I had found. Objection. Hearsay. Lack of foundation. Chain of custody. Evans was screaming now, jumping up and down like a man possessed. They can't introduce that. They never disclosed it. It's a fabrication. Quiet, Mr. Evans. Judge Hanrahan roared. He looked at Ellen. Counselor, approach. With the exhibit. Ellen walked to the clerk's desk, picked up a small evidence bag containing the memory card, and handed it to the judge. He examined it, then looked at Marina. Miss Sloan, do you recognize this item? Marina didn't answer. She was staring at me, her chest heaving, her perfect composure in ruins. I held her gaze, my expression cold and unforgiving. I gave her a slight, mocking nod. Play it, I mouthed silently. Judge Hanrahan turned to the bailiff. Deputy, play the recording. Over the speakers, loud enough for the court to hear. The bailiff connected the device to the sound system. The room held its breath. Then, a click, followed by the slightly distorted but unmistakably clear voices from the recorder. First, Declan's smooth, arrogant tone. 5 million, Walt. Just take the fall. It's cleaner that way. We'll make sure it looks like you kept it all. Marina will handle the rest. Then Walter's voice, sharp and angry. You're out of your mind, Frost. I'm not going to jail for you. Then, the voice that shattered Marina's world. Her own voice, cold and calculating. He's too stubborn. We do it my way. We put the cash in his garage. I'll handle the warrant and the witness. Sal Ricci is already on board. Once Walter is the primary, you walk as a cooperating witness. You keep the company, Declan. I'll make sure of it. Why are you doing this, Marina? Declan's voice again. Why sacrifice Lachlan's father? A pause. Then her voice, chilling in its clarity. Because I can't let you go down again. I won't. Lachlan will understand eventually. His father is just an old man with a few years left. You have a future, a legacy. I'm not going to let my father's mistakes define yours. The recording continued, capturing her detailed instructions on where to hide the money, how to coach Ricci, and her cold dismissal of Walter's fate. The courtroom exploded. Reporters were on their feet, shouting over each other. The gallery was in an uproar. Judge Hanrahan was pounding his gavel repeatedly, his face purple with rage. Order. Order in the court. Sit down. Now. Marina didn't move. She sat frozen in the witness box, her face a mask of devastation. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her eyes were still fixed on me, burning with a hatred so intense it was almost palpable. She looked like a woman who had just watched her entire world, her career, her reputation, her freedom, evaporate in a span of 3 minutes. Evans was slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. He looked like he was going to vomit. Judge Hanrahan finally restored a semblance of order. He looked at Marina, his expression thunderous. "Ms. Sloan, stand down from the witness stand. Immediately. You're relieved of this case, effective instantly. Your conduct here today is not only grounds for immediate disbarment, but likely criminal prosecution. U.S. Marshals, please escort Ms. Sloan from the courtroom and into custody. She is to be held pending an emergency detention hearing on charges of obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy to violate civil rights." 2 marshals in tactical vests moved to the witness stand. Marina didn't resist. She let them lead her out, her movements robotic. As she passed the defense table, she paused. She leaned down, her face inches from mine. Her voice was a raw, broken whisper, meant only for me. "Why, Lachlan? Why did you do this? He's an old man. He would have died quietly in prison. I was going to let him live out his days. You destroyed me. Was saving your father's pride worth destroying your wife? Worth destroying our life?" I stood up, meeting her gaze. I leaned in close, so only she could hear my reply, my voice cold and steady, devoid of any emotion. "You forgot one thing, Marina. A prosecutor's power isn't a goddamn scale to decide who deserves to live and who deserves to rot. You used my father as a transaction to save your ex. You didn't just break the law. You violated the oath you swore to uphold. You sacrificed the truth for your own selfish desires. Now, you're just paying the price. The only thing I destroyed was the lie you built." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine for any trace of the man she'd married. She found none. With a choked sob, she turned and let the marshals lead her away. The sound of the heavy courtroom doors slamming shut behind her echoed like a gunshot. Judge Hanrahan turned his attention to the stunned gallery. "This court is adjourned. The indictment against Walter Pierce is hereby dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Pierce, you're free to go. Mr. Evans, consider yourself on notice. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania will be conducting a full internal investigation into this matter, and I expect your full cooperation. Court is adjourned." Another bang of the gavel. Chaos erupted again, but this time it was a chaos of celebration. Reporters swarmed Ellen and me, shouting questions. I ignored them all, pushing through the crowd until I reached the holding area door. Through the small window, I saw Walter. He was still in his orange jumpsuit, but he was standing tall, his eyes red but clear. He saw me and gave me a slow, proud nod. I nodded back. It was over. The nightmare was over. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Walter was processed out within the hour. We walked out of the courthouse together, blinking in the sunlight, to a fresh wave of cameras. But this time, the questions were different. "Mr. Pierce, how does it feel to be exonerated? Lachlan, what's next for your family?" I held up a hand, silencing them. Today, justice was served. My father is an innocent man, and the truth prevailed. Beyond that, we have no comment. We walked to my car, leaving the circus behind. Inside, the silence was deafening. Walter sank into the passenger seat, letting out a long, shuddering breath. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "I actually can't believe it. That recording, where did you find it?" "Hidden in your desk," I said, starting the engine. "Right where you left it. You always were smarter than she gave you credit for, Dad." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You did good, son. Real good. But at what cost? Marina, she's going away for a long time. She chose her path," I said, my voice hard. "She made her bed. Now she lies in it." The news that evening was dominated by the scandal. Marina Sloan, the power hunter, was the headline. By nightfall, Declan Frost had been arrested at Philadelphia International Airport, trying to board a private jet to the Bahamas. Facing a mountain of evidence, including the emails Marina had sent him instructing him on how to hide the money and destroy records, he flipped faster than a pancake. He gave up everything, every bribe, every cover-up, every case Marina had killed to protect him. The SDPA launched a full-scale internal investigation, and it wasn't long before the scope expanded beyond just my father's case. They found a pattern. Marina had been Frost's guardian angel for years, burying investigations into his competitors, slow-walking probes into his company's practices, all to keep him out of prison and their relationship intact. 3 months later, Marina pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges: obstruction of justice, witness tampering, conspiracy, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The plea deal spared her a trial, but not a lengthy sentence. She was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison. She didn't look at me during the sentencing hearing. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, a broken shell of the woman who had once been the most powerful prosecutor in the city. I testified against her, of course. So did Walter. We told the truth, the whole truth, and the truth burned her. I sold the townhouse in Society Hill. Too many ghosts. Walter moved back into his old place in Chestnut Hill, and I helped him get his affairs in order. He's slower now, quieter, but his name is cleared. The community that had protested outside his house now sends him letters of apology. The Inquirer ran a front-page retraction and a glowing profile of his decades of honest service. I stayed in Philadelphia, but I changed jobs. I couldn't go back to risk management in construction. The industry was too tangled up in the mess. Instead, I started consulting for a firm that specialized in forensic auditing for municipalities. I help cities find the cracks in their systems before people like Marina and Declan can exploit them. It's quieter work, but it feels necessary. Sometimes late at night, I think about Marina, about the woman she was and the woman she became. I think about the choices she made and the price she paid. I don't feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for the idealism she murdered to save a man who ultimately traded her freedom for his own. I visited her once, about a month into her sentence. I went to the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. She looked small and lost in her khaki uniform. She didn't want to see me, but the warden let me in anyway. We sat across from each other in the visitation room, separated by a thick pane of glass. She picked up the phone first. I waited, then picked up mine. "Why are you here, Lachlan?" she asked, her voice hollow. "To see the cost of your choices," I said. "To make sure you understand that you weren't a victim of circumstance. You were the architect of your own downfall." She looked away, tears streaming down her face. "I loved him, Lachlan. I loved him so much it blinded me. And I loved you too. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could save him without destroying everything." "You can't save someone by destroying someone else," I said. "Especially not by destroying an innocent man. Especially not my father." She nodded, a choked sob escaping her. I know that now. I'm sorry, Lachlan. I'm so sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. The anger was still there, a cold knot in my gut, but it was mixed with something else. Pity, maybe even a trace of grief for the life we'd lost. "Sorry isn't enough, Marina," I said quietly. "It never is, but it's a start. Maybe you can use these years to figure out who you were before the ambition and the lies took over. Maybe then you can find a way to live with yourself." I hung up the phone. She kept hers to her ear for a long time, staring at me through the glass, her eyes filled with a despair that was almost palpable. I turned and walked out, leaving her there. I didn't look back. Walking to my car, I breathed in the cool Connecticut air. It was a long drive back to Philadelphia. Back to my father, back to my new life, back to the truth. I'd lost a wife, a marriage, and a piece of my own soul in this fight. But I'd save my father. I'd save the truth. And in a city built on shadows and secrets, that counted for something. I got in the car and started the engine. The radio played a local news report about the ongoing investigations into other officials Marina had protected. The story wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for me, it was. I pulled out of the parking lot, heading south on I-95. The road stretched out before me, long and uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I was driving it with my eyes wide open.